Good relationships are not just about the good times that you spend together. They also have obstacles that you have to endure together as well. One of those obstacles being fighting, confrontation, arguing. And no one finds confrontation pleasant, but it's completely normal. A lot of people consider fighting to be a sign that you're incompatible, that you're too different, that it's not going to work out. Maybe the problem is that we don't exactly understand what we're fighting about. So today I'm going to explain a little bit about how confrontation is a commonplace thing, how it's very normal, how it comes about in relationships, and what's really going on during an argument. Take, for example, a relationship. When you think of the qualities that you consider to be very important in a relationship, let's say your ideal relationship, what do you think of? You think of honesty, trust, something that's real and down to earth. That's exactly what arguing is. It's honest, it's real. And you're talking to someone you trust with your beliefs and values. So we need to look at conflict in a different light so that we can understand that it is normal and it's commonplace and it's not something that is actually a bad thing in relationships. Let's first look at how we are all individuals. Every single person has a different background. Every different person has beliefs and values. No same person has lived the same life as you have. So we all bring our own view of the world into a relationship. So why do we get so worked up when we don't agree on everything? It's impossible. Why would you agree on everything if you have all come from your own backgrounds? We have this idea that conflict is a bad thing and it means that you don't belong together. But no one is exactly like you. So why would they think like you? We need to understand that in relationships, conflict just seems more prevalent because it's someone that we really care about. Someone that we care about the way they feel and how they see our beliefs and their beliefs as well. So when they challenge our beliefs, it gets a little bit more upsetting than, say, your mom. That's why it gets so intense. Let's look at conflict in a different light, biological light. We're going to talk about the reason you react the way you do when you're in conflict. So Sue Johnson is a clinical psychologist. She writes articles for Psychology Today. She said that the basic tenet of attachment theory is that isolation, not just physical isolation, but emotional isolation, is traumatizing to people. Traumatizing. So when you are alone and you don't feel safe, you get scared. There is a part of your brain called the amygdala that is the fear center. And when you are put in a threatening situation, the amygdala sends out an alert to the entire body saying, danger, you're in a threatening situation, we need to fight or flight. We don't always look at conflict as a life-threatening situation, but our mind does. Because when you are having conflict with someone, they're attacking your beliefs, they're coming at you, they're challenging you. So you may not necessarily run away as if it was a life-threatening situation, but you retaliate, you get defensive, you fight back. You may say things you don't mean, say hurtful things. These are all things that happen during confrontation. So we need to understand that it's biological the way we react, and it's not necessarily bad. The important thing to remember is to recognize the way we're responding, and maybe take a step back and say, you know what, I'm really sorry. I got scared there for a second. Let's continue this conversation. So now that we've talked a little bit more about how conflict is commonplace, how it's normal and everyone does it, and the fact that your response and the defensiveness that comes about during conflict is biological, let's go more into the specifics of how conflict comes about in relationships. Oh, sorry. Sue Johnson also said, although our culture has framed dependency as a bad thing, as a weakness, it is not. Being attached to someone provides our greatest sense of security and safety. It means depending on a partner to respond when you call, to know that you matter to him or her, that you are cherished, and that you will respond to their emotional needs. Emotional needs are very important in relationships, and I think we can all agree with that. let's take a new relationship into light. When you're in a new relationship, you just meet somebody. It's really exciting. You're very curious about this person. You want to get to know them. You're intensely connected to everything they need. You're very attentive to their needs because you want them to know that you like them and you want to know if they like you back. But as the relationship goes on, say months, years, doesn't matter, this all comes about at some point in time, you get more comfortable, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. You're comfortable, you get to hang out without feeling like you have to dress up all the time. You aren't afraid to talk about difficult topics, things that you really care about, and you open up a little bit more. But this is also a time when you become a little less attentive to their needs. So this is when disconnect in emotional needs comes about. And a lot of fights are about emotional disconnection. For example, we will take a heterosexual relationship. With a heterosexual relationship, let's say a man comes home to his wife, his girlfriend, and asks to have sex. And she declines. She doesn't necessarily say it in an abrupt way or a polite way, but it doesn't really matter because he's feeling rejected. He's feeling insecure, and he's feeling disconnected from her. So instead of taking the situation and stepping back and thinking, you know what, I know she loves me and she just must not be in the mood, and saying, you know, that's too bad, I was really looking forward to that tonight. Instead he says, fine. Turns his back to her, acts distant, or he says, of course, we never make love anymore. Now she's feeling attacked. She is seeing that he is angry at her. And he is feeling that she is distant, that she is cold, and she doesn't care anymore. If you look at these feelings, these are all surface emotions. So when we fight, we're using our surface emotions. You're a jerk, you're so distant, and this and that. Or she's so cold. But what's really going on is the disconnection of emotions during conflict. So let's move on to a little bit more about how when there's a disconnection in a relationship, how it makes you feel really insecure. And you get scared. And you don't know how to react because the person you care about, the person that is supposed to be there for you, is challenging you. And this always happens, and what's going on in the situation is when you're feeling disconnected, the person you're thinking about all day long, you care about and obsessing about, the way they're treating you is trickling down into other parts of your relationship that you may not really see. I'll use an example. A wife and a husband live together, and he gets up, and sometimes he makes her a cup of coffee, sometimes he doesn't. He makes himself a cup of coffee, and she comes out and says, well, where's mine? He's like, oh, I didn't know you wanted one. Of course you didn't, she says. I don't think she's really upset about the coffee. I think she's feeling disconnected, and the fact that he forgot to keep her in mind makes her upset. She's feeling alone and that he's not thinking about her. And the big problem here is people aren't communicating. Well, they are communicating, but they're not communicating what's really going on. They're the surface emotions. They're not exactly what the problem is. So conflict is about emotional disconnection, but it also can be about different dynamics of relationships. So we'll dip into that. Let's first talk about sex. Sex is almost always a discussion about feelings of being loved and cared for and a deeper need for protection. Money. I'm sure we all fight about money. Money is about a spender and a saver. Someone's spending either whether they're telling someone or not, and the other person's saving. These fights are always about power and balance. What's really going on is someone's feeling that the other person feels they have more power and they can spend more money without consulting them. House chores. When the dishes start piling up and you want someone to do the laundry and they're just not doing it. This is actually about needs for feeling that you are respected and that you have worth. It's not exactly that he left his socks on the floor, she's not doing her dishes. It's actually that you're feeling like they don't respect you enough to help out around the house. And finally, work. A lot of people fight about work, especially in marriage. It's all about expectations and the differences in expectations that you have. And if you don't communicate those expectations, you're not going to know what the other person is expecting in the relationship. Let's say the man thinks that he will go on a Saturday and work on some stuff in the office for a couple hours, but her idea is that on the weekend it's time for them because they work all week. Well, they're going to get in a fight if they don't talk about what they expect out of the relationship. So what I hope you pulled from today was a little bit more about how conflict is commonplace, how it's normal, how your reaction is a biological thing and it's not something to be ashamed of, and it's something that's very normal. And also to understand that you're not always arguing about what you think you are. It's all about emotional disconnection and different needs that aren't being communicated. So hopefully next time you fight with your significant other, you actually understand what you're really fighting about.